I think that the brand stands for something a bit more and not just fashion. And I think, and again, I won't give any away, but I think there's so many different verticals you could get into if you wanted to, because when you have such a powerful brand, then it makes sense.
Assalamu alaikum, hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Retail Remix Stories. This is the place where you meet inspiring business leaders who, through their massively transformative purpose, are shaping not only their businesses, but also building piece of the future in the region and in the world. Our guest today is a person who I'm really envious about because he holds two seats at one time. He's the Chief Operating Officer and the Chief Technology Officer of a brand that was born in Dubai and is now making waves across the world. Our guest today is Marc Jeffrey, COO and CTO of the Giving Movement. Welcome to the show, Marc.
Thank you. Thank you for having me as well.
Thank you very much for joining us today. We've been talking about stories of inspiring leaders, right? And how they are building their businesses today. The starting point of all stories usually is once upon a time, there was a little boy called Marc.
Yeah.
So why don't we start there and help our listeners understand where you're from? What was your childhood like? Any key influences?
Sure. I'm from a city called Dundee. It's the fourth largest city in Scotland. And yeah, when I say largest, I'm talking about only 200,000 people. So it's not exactly a huge city kind of thing. I grew up, actually, I was kind of brought up by my mum and my gran, actually. So while you would think that would put me in a bucket of being a bit of a timid kind of kid, it was quite the opposite. And so when I was younger, I guess I was potentially playing two parts or living two lives, where on one side I was a bit of a geek where I was into gaming, watching films and things as well. I was obsessed with, films and music and gaming. On the other hand, I was out mucking about with my mates, causing trouble, getting up to no good. And so I think I think, well, I like to say we all grew up. I still feel young. I still feel like, I still got up to no good. But over the course of, I guess, my childhood, like tech in general, something that I have a passion about now, obviously, was definitely prevalent for the whole time. I used to joke with my mum a lot that I used to kind of constantly break her computer. She bought this computer. She was doing this postgraduate degree later on in life. And she had this old Windows 95 computer, and I'm constantly on it, breaking things and things. I was only a young kid at the time, maybe 7 or 8 year old onwards, kind of thing like this as well. And yeah, I guess from then I've always been a bit of a tinkerer, always into electronics, technology in general. And but that wasn't actually how I started my career. I made a big kind of move when I was younger. There was either two paths. You could be a tradesman, as I like to call it, where you get into kind of trades, there's like 3-4 buckets of, you either get into electrical work, you get into kind of plumbing, joinery and things like this as well. You go into that spectrum, or because that was in demand back then, or you go university track. And so when I wanted to go to university, I'd actually signed up for what we call mechatronics, which is kind of like robotics and electronics together.
Amazing.
And I got in, everything was good to go, but last minute, I decided, my mates and everything were all out, mucking about, doing things, and everybody was traveling, and there were jobs. They were only, young, 16, and they already had a salary. And I wanted to go to Ibiza. I wanted to do things with my mates. I wanted to, do these things. And I realized if I went to university, I wasn't from a really well-off. Like my mum was, paycheck to paycheck, not in a bad way. She's a teacher now, and she did a higher education later on in life. But it was a lot tougher back then, let's say. And I guess I wanted to, since I was younger, I was very independent in a way, and I wanted to do my own thing. So I decided to actually let me go into electrical side of things. And so that's what I started doing, actually, is electrical installation. I used to travel all around Scotland, installing like backup generator systems, doing commissioning for big rigs and offshore platforms and this, but they were parked up, onshore. So that was my beginning of the journey. And when I was about 21, I decided that I wanted to go offshore. I wanted to travel overseas. At which point I went away and did some kind of courses and things like this as well. That you had to kind of get these qualifications like rope access and this complex thing and what like. And I did it all myself. Did it all with my own expenses, with the hope of going to get a job. And I got a phone call from Dubai, and I thought it was a bit of a joke. And the guy says, "I think you've got everything that we need. Are you willing to come to Dubai?" And at the time, I was thinking maybe it'd be great to get a job in Spain or something. But then Dubai came up.
That's quite a leap.
Yeah. Dubai came up. So yeah, traveled to Dubai. 22-year-old. Didn't know anybody here. My mom and dad had actually visited on the way to Australia, so they kind of gave me a bit of a brief. They're like, "Go for it," So I came over when the first company I worked for out here was essentially an oil and gas manufacturing company who was sending their equipment all over the world, and I was going to be part of the maintenance and commissioning team. So we would basically oversee some of the manufacturing, and then we would go over with a team, and I would kind of supervise and work with that team to install this kind of customized equipment offshore and onshore all over the world. So my first, I would say 5 years. I used to travel everywhere. I've been to places like Papua New Guinea. I've been to Sakhalin Island, which is like an island a disputed island between Russia and Japan. I've been to Yemen a dozen times. I've been to Iraq. I've been to Sudan, all over the Middle East. I've been to South America as well, Mexico and things as well, North America all over as well. So I've been everywhere. Honestly, it's been
truly a global citizen, right? I think. Is there any country that you've been to from where there's no representation in the UAE right now?
So I would say, what representation you mean? Like
citizens living here and
I mean, I would say, Papua New Guinea for sure. I don't think I've ever met anybody from Papua New Guinea over here.
Oh yeah.
But honestly, it was great at the time, and my miles and that were good. Skyward, it was gold every single year. I found out, and back then it was a lot different as well, to be fair. And it was great at the time. But unfortunately, the travel gets to you actually after some time. I couldn't really, keep a relationship. Things were a bit turmoil in my life. Some months I would be completely out with Dubai. I would be, I'd travel to, a famous story was actually I went to the time I talked about when I traveled back from Papua New Guinea. I arrived back in Dubai. 2 days later, I had to travel to Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean, and then come back to Dubai again. And I got a call to go to Russia. So I was like, so it's like always.
What was your title, Prime Minister?
Well, they used to say, unfortunately, a few of the uprisings and things around about the Middle East, they just coincidentally happened. I went to Libya, and there was an uprising in Libya, a week after I left, and similar with Yemen. And the guys in my company always said, like, what have you been up to there? Are you working for us or working for somebody else?
Oh my God.
So, but yeah, it was fantastic. Loads of experience. Big part of my journey to where I am today. But in the back end of all this, I'm tinkering away, learning different programming languages, building things myself, doing some freelance work as well. Like part time with like some online, working on these online kind of channels and things. So they get some like freelancing work because my real passion is in tech. But unfortunately, another job opportunity came my way, which was one of our clients who used to operate the equipment on the oil and gas. So we were supplying the equipment and commissioning it. And then one of the ones who were the operator of that very equipment, they used to basically do essentially like when you're drilling into the ground, you basically need these downhole. Actually, the drill head is surprisingly not the most expensive part. You have the first couple of drill stems. The piping is actually full of like radioactive materials and different sensors and things as well. And they send up signals to the surface to let us know what's happening under the ground, like what kind of densities and things of rock and what like. And then when they finally get to a point of they want to do some directional drilling, there's a team for doing this as well. And then when they actually get some oil up, then there's a whole team to do the early sampling and things for the oil. So it was, it was great to get that experience because I did that, some travel obviously with them as well. I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And, and during that time, I was like, I need to get into tech. I need to, I'm loving this, but oil and gas is so volatile and tech's, is the time. So I decided that I wanted to kind of get a job in tech, but also realized that, maybe, I needed to do something outside of my comfort zone. So I started a community in Dubai, actually, which was the Ruby on Rails community at the time. That was the kind of framework I was working with at the time. Oh. That was the biggest in Dubai at the time. There's about 1,200 members. We used to do weekly meetings at one point. And since during that when I was in the company, they were actually trying to buy an ERP system, and it was a complete from the get go. I mean, I probably shouldn't say the name, but anyway, from the get go, the name was Lemon Software, and I don't know where I come from. A lemon is normally a dud, like I think they were trying to piggyback on the Apple narrative, but a lemon is not exactly the best of fruits. So and it was a complete dud. And so what I did is I ended up spending a few weekends and nights for a couple of weeks and built my own ERP system and presented it to them. internally, but without bias of saying, I didn't tell them that I'd built it or anything. I just said that there is an ERP, we could use it, and showcased it. And they were like, "Whoa, this is amazing." So some of the head guys came over from Geneva, which is headquarters, and looked at this. It's the fastest software we've got. There's 100,000 employees in this company. This is amazing. Where can we get this from? I was like, actually, I built it, and they're like, "Oh shit,"
Wow.
So
Super impressive.
Yeah. What do we do here? And I said, like, well, I could start splitting my time half. I'll do my job and, get some support, but I'll invest half my time into building this thing out. And so it's still to this day, they're using it, even though I left years later, I'm still basically an advisor for that as well, which then led to my first tech role, which was with a company called Ep.2. And they had found me actually through this Dubai community group. And they kind of said, like, what are you guys up to? And we're starting up a brand new company. And at the time I was expecting my first kid actually with my wife. And, I said to her, like, if we don't jump ship now, I'm going to, at the time we had a great pension scheme in oil and gas, you have great insurance, you get a car paid for you, multiple flights a year, and then moving to a startup, so it was, so she agreed with me, thankfully, and I really appreciate that from my wife as well, that like, if now's the time, if you want to really get into tech, now was the time. So I'd already been working, giving them advice for about 6 months or so. And they're like, we need you on board. We need you to lead the team. This is like, you've basically, built an infrastructure anyway, just doing part-time. So you do come on full-time, we're going to get some scary results.
Right.
So yeah, joined them and, moved up the ranks while I was there. I still advise Ep, and I'm still like a shareholder in Ep and things as well. I joined very early. I love what those guys do and really appreciate it. The team was fantastic as well. Now I've had to build a new team and, on a new journey as well. And it's e-commerce this time. And funnily enough, actually, when I went in for the interview process, one of my predecessor actually before me, the CEO before me, he hired me. And I was joining as the CTO at the time. And he asked me, you got any e-commerce experience? I went, no, but, I could pretty much do anything. And he kind of laughed. I went, I'm serious. When I get serious, I can do anything. And he's kind of laughing. I said, okay, test me. And so they gave me kind of an assessment and things as well. And I was up against a few guys who were, 15 years in e-commerce and obviously nailed it. So then they said, right, let's give this guy a chance, so let's go for it. So yeah.
Well done. So I think one leadership skill, definitely, if you get your mind to it, you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, of course. Whatever I want to do. That's the passion matters. The passion matters.
I think,
yeah. So that's, I know it was a long journey, but it's good to know all the ins and outs. And
I'm sure there's some kids out there who really get inspired by listening to what Marc went through, right from, of course, there's the glamour side of traveling 65 or 100 countries.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of hard work, right? You're burning the midnight oil
scary
almost 365 days a year, right?
Yeah.
And so coming to the giving movement, I think, like I was saying, it's a UAE-born brand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of prestige and honor around it. I think it's changing the paradigm from fashion being, a style statement to actually becoming a movement.
Yeah.
And while we know, some bits of it, would love to hear your views of what made you join the team at the Giving Movement.
I think it's funny as well because when they first reached out to me, I was thinking, I don't know if it's for me. I think because where we were at with EAP, we were into some deep tech. We were building these customized protocols, which were a combination of offline synchronization, which was all custom built with WebSocket support and REST support. So it was crazy stuff. We were doing these things that have never been done before to turn the restaurants themselves. You have an iPad, you have a desktop, and they want the iPad to be offline because the internet connectivity problems. So we were deep into the stuff that I love. We were like, and I was still coding, even though I was like VP. I was like, on it all the time, just because. Again, I would say, one thing I did is, over the course of my career, I like to what I like to call is learn enough to be dangerous, and so I constantly learn, sales, marketing, everything, and. Like I said, from my previous experience with oil and gas, there's a lot of project management as well. So basically, coming into all this, I wanted to make sure that I was the best tech leader or engineering leader I could imagine. And I ended up, listening to, for the best part, there's a podcast called The Modern CTO and things as well. And then, various other bits and pieces. But I particularly remember doing about 300 episodes of this Modern CTO, over the course of my EAP to try and see how can I make the, things better for the team and for tech in general. Like how do I approach things? And so when I seen the Giving Movement, they were kind of using Shopify, and I was like, I don't know, feels like there's no room for me here. What am I going to do? And then when they start explaining the numbers and they start explaining the impact they're making and the things that they've done and how, I'd be part of this, that's when things start changing. Actually, maybe I won't be doing so much hardcore tech. Well, that's what I thought at the time, at least. But I'd be taking a different stance. I'd be learning, e-commerce. I'd be getting into fashion, which I have no interest in, to be fair. But obviously now it's, part of the parcel kind of thing. And I'd honestly be part of a real thing. It wasn't just, SaaS, software as a service. It was, we're actually, we're donating massive amounts of money to charity. Everything we're doing is eco-friendly. And again, I don't come from a background of particularly caring about that stuff. And when I first joined, it was like, this is cool. But also, it's not my dream to join one of these kind of companies and anything else as well. But I thought, at this point, I get to do tech, I get to be involved in this, and I get to learn e-commerce. This is probably a winning combination here. So, so obviously I took the job, and from they say, this book, The First 90 Days, and in that he says, don't make any harsh decisions in the first 90 days because you need to learn the business. Right. With the giving movement, they move so fast. Essentially, I signed the offer. They're like, yeah, so build a strategy. So yeah, I had to, obviously they're impressed by the model that I built them in terms of how I would grow the team, how I would grow the tech team, anything else I would do as well. And, what I would be looking at particularly funnel wise, marketing wise, everything. Martech especially as well. There are massive problems with Martech as well, operations and things like automate and all this. And so yeah, I went deep into the deep end, and at the same time, I'm I don't want to slack on EAP because I was leaving a team that I was sad to leave. I wasn't leaving on any bad terms. In fact, like I said, I still work with these guys all the time. They're they constantly call me for advice, and I was an advisor for a long time as well. So I was like, shit, so I'd already, informed my wife, unfortunately, that for the next few months, it's going to be tough. So I was literally, eat up. So yeah, massive leaps and bounds since I first joined. It wasn't just, speed and things like that. That's not what we only cared about. It's part of UX as well. But we had a design team. We rebuilt the way that we do automation across all the different departments. As typical in-house tech teams do, we're involved in everything. And and then obviously, times changed and obviously, but even the BI, which when I first joined, it was scary. The data was just whatever query enemy wanted to create that day, unfortunately, and so we completely rebuilt that. Hired an in-house team as well, which again there was some people already in-house, but very junior. So we hired a couple of senior guys came in, rebuilt everything using DBT and things as well. I had the full infrastructure rebuilt from the ground up. I even built my own attribution model at one point. Amazing. So we did so many things with data, and now we're in this amazing place where I would say the data, hands down, is one of the best in the region in terms of MarTech, in terms of automation and things like this as well. So,
I think whenever we talk about tech, especially in the region, there's a lot of two pillars that really make tech work, right? One is talent, which you rightly said, you have a very strong team. The other one is where it comes to costs, right? So yes. I'd rather call them investments. Because just last week I was reading somewhere, it said smart tech moves money, but real tech makes money.
Yes.
So exactly. How do you kind of?
So I would say hands down, and I'm not kind of blowing my own horn, but hands down, I'm probably the most commercially focused CTO in the market. Absolutely. And I've been to all the meetings, and I can guarantee that. I've been met many of the engineering leaders over here because what does it matter? So many startups make the same mistakes. Just build, but it's not about building. We all have a desire, and I all have a desire. Let's build this thing custom. But then build versus buy. It's no longer about build versus buy. It's about, should we even do it in the first place? Should we do any of this stuff in the first place? What is it improving? Right. And so a lot of the time we forget that we're either improving the leading indicators, the lagging indicators. Building something for the sake of being cool is no longer viable. People need to be profitable now. We can't have businesses are apart from AI businesses, no longer is anybody funding any business now, which isn't profitable, at least break even. Back in 2 years ago, it was like, yeah, you got a cool idea. Let's throw some money on this problem and let's see what the hell happens. And then look what happened. The industry completely changed, and everything changed. The last couple of seasons, I always call them seasons, as in hiring seasons. Everybody gets fired in January, and then they do all the hiring again. So the last couple of seasons, it's been tough. Even all the big social guys and that have been firing, and Facebook, everybody, because internally, pretty much is constantly back and forth. How do we organize the VM for one side, the content on one side, but also what does this little feature do to actually improve? And sometimes it is a bit of it's a quick one, it looks cool, let's do it. But then then there's like, this is this big thing that we're doing. Why? And I always first want to say, why would we do that? What's the reason here? And we have this concept internally called short toes, which essentially means, you can't step on anybody else's toes because we've all got short toes. So feel free to say no.
Oh, right.
So every all hands, every all hands stand up, guys, short toes. If you see something wrong in content, you see something wrong in tech, you see something, go, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? What makes sense here? And just kind of have this kind of healthy, challenging aspect. And that's, and I credit to everybody actually, the whole company, including, tech as well, is that there's a lot of feedback. We really, give each other some tough feedback. And sometimes I'll be like, this is shit, guys. What are we doing here? I don't understand. And they take it well because they know I'm coming from a good place. I'm not taking, I always say to them, feel free to veto me with data.
Yes.
Feel free to veto me with some kind of proof that I'm wrong. But I can guarantee you, I don't think this is going to work. And here's why. And if they come back tomorrow and like, you're wrong, Mark, because we've got the data and it says this, you know what? I'll eat my own shoe then. Fair enough. Let's do it. However, let's do V1, V2, let's make a compromise. So there's always that kind of compromise. And the business hat on me is like, let's not waste time on this because looking at the backlog, that's way more important. But again, the team could challenge me anytime on this kind of thing. So
nice. And I think talking about tech, you can't not talk about AI.
Yes.
And that's one area where I think there's lots that's happening.
Yeah.
Like for example, the company I come from, Find, we're doing a design to shelf in 21 days.
Okay.
And something that we're working on, right? Things like these sound cool, but they need a lot of back-end integration with factories and everything. So what's your opinion? I mean, not about design as a service, but largely on AI, what do you think?
The funny thing is, and this is what gets me, I constantly get, bombarded with email requests and all sorts of stuff, we could AI the shit out of it. But what everybody doesn't realize is if you don't really have a solid data set or infrastructure, AI will do nothing. So like a lot of people will think, I'll just throw AI at the problem.
Right.
But then they spend 6 months trying to get the AI integrated. And by the time they do it, it's a loss, it's a sunken cost because the reality is I didn't even give them that benefit, if that makes sense. So what we did is to take a slightly different approach of there's two versions of AI, in my opinion, in e-commerce and any brand. One is internal AI and one is external, like what we push into the customers. And so what we're pushing to the customers perhaps is like, obviously Gen AI is big right now. And I don't know if you're aware, but we have our own in-house content team. We have our own studio inside the office and things as well.
Yes.
We hire everybody in-house as well. And so we produce all our own content. I'm also overseeing this as well. And the content team do a fantastic job. All of them are kick-ass. I can't ask for, a stronger team. Like all come from the angles like BTS side, the UGC side, and they've all got tactical this, core that, they're doing different kind of campaigns. And every single week we're thinking like, what can we do to improve it? Because we have retouchers and things as well, And so we're always thinking like, what can we do to improve this? But to be honest, every time we test it out, it's not quite there yet. And we find ourselves at the budget we've got, and because we do a lot of stuff in-house, we're just not finding this angle yet. Being a D2C brand, we're a mono brand, not a marketplace. So for instance, in a marketplace, you could just create descriptions of products. You could perhaps create some images of products in that as well. But at D2C, we're only producing a few SKUs every single drop.
Yes.
So maybe not a few, but a few hundred, for instance. So while we have and we've trained, we've got our own GPTs and things as well to try and train it on the language we want to use for voice of the brand and things as well. We somehow feel like a human still do a better job at this point, and especially when it comes to but almost what we've done now is we've augmented our process. So we've augmented certain things. So for instance, like resizing things or mass producing different quality, like aspect ratios or mass editing videos and things as well. We've started to use AI to perfect this. The actual content creation and things as well, because we're a D2C brand and we want to show how we do things in a certain way. Styling's a big part for us as well because our products is in this kind of space of lounge and active.
Yes.
We want to make sure that people know you can wear this stuff, out and about. You can wear this stuff to work, not just, to a leisure activity or anything like that as well. So, when we ask AI to do these things, unfortunately, it comes up with some really odd results. Right. So I think we're still a bit away yet from, fully adopting it then. But what it does allow the team is we will use AI to, for instance, to plan some of the shoots and things. We use AI to help us to understand what would be a better strategy and how would we better optimize, across like, entertainment category of content, to the promotional category, to the inspiring category, things like this as well. So like, what are we doing wrong? How could we, here's an image that we put out and it didn't perform well on Meta, but it performed well on Snap. What do you think? And I'm like, oh, well, based on your previous, catalog you gave me, then this one, the reason is the logo's not available. Like, yeah, you're right. So it's helping us to augment our assumption of things, especially data as well. We constantly say like, here's all this data. We presented it in this way. The content feels strong, but it's not performing. And then we use AI to help us to understand what our assumptions, or validate our assumptions, if you like. So that's like the first part of it. But then the experience itself, so retail experience as an in-store experience. A big thing that we're moving towards right now, probably the end of this year, is this kind of, first off, we've got our own iPads and things that we've built this kind of, it's all web-based because it's internal facing,
right.
But we built this in-house omni-channel CRM system because we all come from like CRM kind of back. It was very quick for us to put this together, like a couple of weeks. And what happened is we wanted to integrate, so as people come into the store, you can ask for their phone number and then they give it, and we have all the online transactions, the in-store transactions as well. But what we wanted to do is kind of summarize recommendations for people. So the staff are really good in retail to obviously make recommendations, but could an AI assist them and tell them, like based on the previous spending behaviors, based on how long they've been around, show them this. So that's one of the things we want to do. And obviously cameras and things like that have evolved quite a lot now, and you get these kind of very advanced cameras that we want to link up to the system now, where they study heat maps and the VM, like the storefront. They also see like what gender people are, of the returning customers and things like this as well. So you're able to detect as people walk in, that's this customer, this is how we should approach this person. They've previously bought this, so it's really advancing to the point of, are we evading privacy, or is this cool to do this? But obviously we want to do it in a way which is like a way that helps the customers, and there's a recent study done from Amazon actually, who said, the study, I can't remember how many thousand customers they studied again, but they asked customers, would you give us more data to help us personalize your experience? And 80% of them said, absolutely, because everybody knows that the reality is, as long as we're a brand, we want this data to help us sell better to you in a non-spammy way. In fact, if we give you the value straight up without beating around the bush and showing you 1,000 different things, it's more friendly for the customer as well. So, so that's one big part we've got in retail coming down the road. And then online, obviously the personalized experience, everybody's pitching it. But the thing about personalized experience, in my opinion, especially if you look at our app and you look at our experience on web and things as well, product recommendations, we've been using AI for a while for product recommendations things as well. But I think those days are, unless we're doing something very experimental, I think those days are, long gone. I think content personalization is where we're trying to get to. So one of the difficult parts about content recommendations is if you're Meta, if you're Snapchat, then it's easy. You look at cohorts of people who like all this content and cohorts of people who like that content. There's an overlap. These have some, similar interests. Now build an algorithm around that. So likes and clicks and things. But for us, we're a D2C brand. You only see a few pieces of content on the experience. So we did 3 different ways of personal. Like what we're planning to do is capturing the data first. So we started asking for people to tell us the preferences. So now at the end of the funnel, we ask them if, what nationality, what do they like to shop, the birthday and things as they understand the demographics, the age and things as well. But then we started, in the funnel, you see little like messages pop up as you're scrolling down and be like, do you like to see more of this content and things as well, And so we're trying to get a gauge of what people like. So that's like kind of behavioral wise, like what could we do? They're constantly thinking, we understand that, we started off at the beginning with a dream of what we wanted, and now we're following what customers are liking, but we also need to stay in line with trends. And you'll see it recently when we launched the black cherry color, for instance, and that was, we launched it and we planned it for 9 months, and every brand was doing it, and we were like, this is great, we're aligned, because when other brands are doing it, you actually know it's working, because that doesn't mean that it's a copycat type of thing. It just means that we've got this season right, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so I honestly, like I said, there's no, we came from a time of fast growth, kind of startup mentality, and still to this day we're small but mighty. We get shit done. We're all about, we all wear multiple hats, but we're also an established company. We can't compromise now on operations. We can't take risks with, delivery times. We can't take risks with how we order fabrics and this as well. We're really doubled down on the back end way of doing things, to the point of we've just onboarded some new tooling as well to help us do financial budgeting and things as well, to help us understand how to use certain fabrics in a certain way, in a much more planned way and things as well. So we could optimize towards like overspending and underspending things as well. Because we overspend and you think, we spent a little bit, and then so you compensate by underspending, and then you miss opportunities, So it's this constant balance. So now we're kind of onboarding all these different tools to help us both to plan it, kind of like it's a manual augmentation of that, and then to automate it as well, to like do daily replenishments to retail stores based on what's happening, and do kind of, so it's really fascinating space. I would say like the back end space is, obviously I'm really working closely with the guys on that, but credit to the team. The team is obviously also awesome. Like there's no way this is a 1 or 2 man show. There's 100 people behind the scenes thinking about all the cool stuff that we need to automate, and everybody's on board. In the sense that And a lot of companies, especially in fashion, it's like, it feels a bit weird that we're trying to be a bit tech empowered, kind of, automated. This is not the way we always did it. But while there's always some residue, everybody's like, yeah, let's go on. We're small, but might be better if we could produce a bigger bang for buck.
Yeah.
And so everybody's on that same track. And the team, honestly, big credit to the team. Is like whenever we come up with some radical thing, like, can we just use this tool? And they're like, that'll take us a long time to onboard, but yeah, if it has this kind of benefits, then let's do it. So everybody's maybe it's part of my strong coercion as well. Like, this tool's for us, but also I think they are willing to change their way of working and things like that very, very rapidly as well, which is what you need, especially in this time. So back end wise, we are super sophisticated, I would say, in a lot of ways. Like I said, our own OMS system, which kind of operates, multiple inventories. It does multiple operations. It does even some marketing and things as well. Does some kind of transactional marketing things as well. Honestly, like I said, credit to the kind of trading team as well. They constantly, very stressful. I'm involved in all these meetings as well. Every day the numbers are like this, down like that. You're constantly battling everything, changing on a rapid basis. There's no downtime, unfortunately. So it's really like the product team. There's one half of the office planning 1 year ahead, and there's one half of the office planning tomorrow.
Oh, right.
It's literally like that.
What's a long-term strategy? Live tomorrow.
Yeah. And so while we obviously we plan, we forecast our whole budget for the whole year in terms of what we're going to earn revenue wise. But we have to optimize towards it. We recently, again, no blame, one of the social platforms had an issue with their catalog. So for 3 weeks, we were missing some catalog attribution. Oh shit, So then we have to plan and respend and reforecast and do everything. So there's always this, hurry to solve things, and especially on the marketing side, So yeah, it's very much a week on week, day on day. Are we on plan? And if not, let's pivot. We've got this backlog of things that are ready to go in case we need them. So, wow. Whereas on the other side of the office is like, yeah, we know we're buying for autumn winter already.
Wow. What a high energy place it must be.
Yes. And unfortunately, it's not unfortunately, I guess it's a good challenge to have, is I'm involved with both sides of the equation.
Yes.
The founder, he kind of runs the product side of things overall, but we have obviously a lot of senior product team as well. But I just help out more on the operations side, and I help out more on the content side, like support based on what we need. So I'm jumping between also, this long-term planning, thinking about this, and then joining another meeting, like, oh yeah, this thing went down yesterday. Right, okay, so it is amazing, but also very, very challenging for sure. Yeah.
Like I said in the beginning, it's an envious place, but it's also a dangerous place, right?
Oh yeah. Everybody who joins, we make it very clear, guys. This is like a war zone, when you come in, you're in the trenches. You're going to be asked to do things. We obviously try and balance work-life balance, but at the end of the day, whatever we don't accomplish, it goes straight out the pocket of somebody who really needs it, because we do a lot for charity and things as well. So we really try and we're going to nail this, guys. The brand is so important. We're going to do this. We'll be ambitious. We're going to do this. And a lot of people, they'll say this is my lane. There is no lane here. If there's nobody else to do it, you're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, no.
And so I absolutely strongly believe, again, going back to this, and learn enough to be dangerous. I know everybody's not comfortable with it, but sometimes you just have to put on a different hat and get shit done. And as they call it, GSD, that's the common term.
Oh, right.
Bring to every company that I join. It's like, yeah, I know it's tough, but it's for 2 weeks and you just need to do it. And we'll figure out what we do afterwards. But, everybody has to wear a different hat and just get on with it, because at the end of the day, if you can't do it, who else is going to do it?
Amazing. I'm going to title this episode #GSD.
I'm sure if a few of my ex-colleagues and even my current colleagues will laugh about that as well. Yeah. Amazing.
I think one key theme is sustainability. I think outside of AI, there's a lot of conversation around sustainability.
Yes.
And most of the times, sustainability is just a buzzword. With most organizations is trying to pass off as sustainable. Either there are cost considerations or no true value that's being driven.
Yeah.
But the giving movement is actually built on the basis of sustainability, right?
Yes. It's sustainability. We don't use that word anymore because we realize that people get a bit too serious when it comes to sustainability. And so what we we're fully certified in terms of all our materials. Everything comes from ethical sources with no kind of sweatshop scenarios. All of our fabrics are organic, least pesticides as possible. It's all recycled as well where possible. So pretty much everything is 100% recycled, organic to any extent that we can do. So all of our sourcing comes from that angle. But then when it comes to things like, if you want a lot of brands in the US and things got kind of hammered because they weren't doing, for instance, carbon emissions offsetting, we explored it. It was cost an absolute fortune. We attempted to do it all. We realized over time that, it's something we should strive towards, but it's not something we should claim that we're, end-to-end sustainable. But whatever we do is on an eco-friendly. So we kind of changed the word into eco-friendly focus. Like we want to, fashion as an example, a lot of fashion brands, when they have like, stock we have like a few thousand items at the end of one season, we either sell it off at discount. A lot of fashion brands will say like, oh, just throw it in the dump. We don't do that. We keep it and we'll donate it or something like this as well, or we'll have to ethically dispose of it in a way that makes sense for the environment. So we're kind of holding ourselves to a very high standard, right. That I don't think anybody actually realizes. But again, we don't want to be overzealous and be like, yeah, we're sustainable from end to end. We are more sustainable than the large portion of brands out there. But again, sustainability is a kind of a vague and dangerous word, because a lot of people are you doing this? Are you doing this and doing that? And while we try and do everything, we also have to make money, because another angle is if we don't make money, we have to pay charities and things as well. I would say, a bigger focus today is more on the giving back. It's very, very much in the name as well. Right. And giving back is where we are absolutely, that's our number one. Homegrown obviously is a big part of our USP as well. All our factories and things are in the UAE. I don't know if you're aware of that as well. So we produce all our products in that, and or a large portion of, most of our products in the UAE. And so, yeah, like homegrown, giving back. And then this angle of eco-friendly is our kind of third USP, if you like. And unfortunately, while the fashion industry was very big on that back in the day, when we did some consumer focus groups again, we realized that people are not so concerned about that nowadays. So while we as a brand, we will continue to do eco-friendly, it's maybe not as ambitious as it used to be. And not because we don't care, it's just that also we need to actually, we're a private business. We still have to, we still have to report to the board profits, right. And we still have to make money so we can pay charities. So it's more of a, we do everything possible basically. So
yeah, and you're being true to it, right? So you're not unnecessarily claiming things that.
No, absolutely. And like I said, like all of our stuff is a fully certified things as well, and that's what we're kind of it's surprising as well, because a lot of people will say it, but then they got nothing approved. We've actually do all the test certificates from third parties and things as well, outside of the like we have our factories and we have our fabric suppliers, and we do all the certification, but absolute third parties, independent third parties, to make sure that there is no funny business going on. And we've actually, disqualified fabrics in the past. We're like, actually, like there's something a little bit off here. We're going to have to reconsider this order and things as well. So as we get the samples in, for instance, before we order the bulk, we'll do a sample test on it, and then we realize that we're not going to order this bulk, guys, because it doesn't fit to our sustainability standards or our eco-friendly standards. We can't take the bulk order. We're going to go with another supplier. And so we've done that in the past as well. So we do stay to those pieces of the puzzle. Yeah.
Nice. And so I think coming to our last segment, from a 2030 or 2035, what do you see happening in this space, right? Because there's a lot of other brands which will try to imitate, copy, or try to compete with you. Yeah. And what do you see this space actually moving out to be in the next 5 to 10 years?
You mean like fashion in general, or TGM, or how do you think?
So I think TGM, yes, for sure. Yeah. And largely, how do you see technology influencing other brands in trying to catch up with TGM?
Yeah, I think everybody's, we constantly benchmark what everybody else is doing as well. And everybody, I think, is on this similar track to what we're on, I would say, or thinking like that. Now, I know what you're saying, like copycat brands, there's a lot actually, unfortunately. And I think like, every well-established brand, and we've only been here for 5 years, so it's quite good that we're already well-established, to be fair, is going to have some element of counterfeit products and things as well. And we constantly are, visiting different, I won't name the places in Dubai, but constantly visiting different areas of Dubai to, yank those counterfeit products in as well. But, it will always happen. We even use AI tools, funnily enough, as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we use a third-party service. And again, I won't name the name in case it's a bit of a trade secret. We use that, and that searches certain websites, especially around the world, and it'll look for products which sound like us or use our brand name, and even images that look like ours, and do takedown notices. Right. And so, because we see that all over, especially in marketplaces like secondhand marketplaces and things as well, where people think, oh, we'll just claim it's like secondhand, but they're selling them as brand new. So it's not secondhand, if that makes sense. Right. So, but it's obviously counterfeit. So we do a lot of work to stop that. But in the end, it will unfortunately always happen, or they'll create some variants of what looks like us, but it's not exactly like us and things as well. But moving forward, like where does the horizon go? I think TGM as a brand we are strong on fashion and we want to continue to grow on fashion. We want to go into probably some other categories as well. Kind of things you would wear at nighttime, casual wear and things as well down the road, no doubt. But the horizon is wide, actually. And again, we're not going to just jump into something for the sake of jumping into something. But what we stand for is something meaningful, and what we do is shown to be impactful. We've got building schools in India and things as well. It's crazy. Very, very significant efforts being made across the board, including we donate actually to the Gaza humanitarian aid as well just now. So we do a lot of cool stuff, and I think that the brand stands for something a bit more and not just fashion. And I think, and again, I won't give any away, but I think there's so many different verticals you could get into if you wanted to, because when you have such a powerful brand, then it makes sense, and what do we get into, it's still to be figured out, I would say, but it doesn't mean to say we'll only stick in our lane, if that makes sense. We could always experiment with other lanes as well in small ways that we can see, test out the waters. But other fashion brands, for sure, everybody's going into this, unfortunately, Temu and all these guys in it as well as Shein and things as well have brought this whole new spectrum of compete. They don't compete with us. They don't compete with any kind of our brands and our price. We're premium. Well, we actually call us a bridging brand. So what that means is we're kind of like this. We like to call it in the fashion industry, not just us, is accessible luxury. So we're not luxury, and we're not premium. We're kind of just slightly above that in terms of our price point and our in-store experience. I want to invite you down as well to our new City Walk store. It opens in a couple of weeks.
Wow, can't wait to see it.
This is absolutely next level store. There's going to be a flagship store, next level. It's got like rivers and everything going through it. It's crazy stuff, really, really cool. So the experience, the luxury feeling, but the price point is accessible. So that's what we call it luxury, accessible luxury. We don't compete in the space with them, but we call ourselves a bridging brand, as in people who buy luxury products use us for their day-to-day, and people who don't buy luxury products use us as their kind of like their luxury product. Right. So there's called a bridging brand. That's actually a term from our head of merchandising. And she's actually like really good at kind of coming up with these naming conventions and things as well. So that it was, I learned this term when I first joined, let's say. And but yeah, essentially, if you're in this bridging brand space, then Temu and that is not really in our space. However, they do erode the customer's expectations. They do erode, because everybody's thinking, yeah, you get like this thing for like 12 dirhams, So then it erodes people's expectation, thinking absolutely,
That's scary.
and then things like as well. We've heard all the rumors, and again, I don't know how much is true, is like the stuff that we're producing is they're not ethically sourced things as well. So of course, what happens is the consumer spending behavior says, I can get stuff really cheap. So why not? And so this is the all fashion brands are facing now. So what we have to do, along with the other kind of mono D2C brands, is we have to amp up our game in terms of make the experience feel even better. So our mission right now is to be better experience, both online as in top of the funnel and in the funnel as well. The experience needs to be stellar, better on every single level. The content needs to be next level. The personalization needs to be next level. Everything that we do, our activations, our brand marketing, because much like most other brands in this space, that's what they're having to do, because you have to be so different from that space that it almost is a clear cut, if that makes sense, And so we clearly carve out our ICP customer profile, and they have their own, and that's the, it needs to be a clear cut, unfortunately, So that's the difference. And now, again, there's nothing wrong with fast fashion in a sense that, it's consumer friendly, but also it does mean there's a lot of wastage and things as well. Right. So fast fashion is purposely like, it's like fast food, it's got this kind of overarching kind of like rain cloud kind of all over the top of it kind of thing. But we're much more of a space where we're much more kind of premium fashion, if that makes sense. We need to amplify that without amplifying the prices so much, if that makes sense. So the experience needs to be super luxury, super premium, omni-channel. Everything needs to be next level. So when people come in, they feel good, and that's like one of our things is that we're comfy, but you also feel good wearing us, because what we stand for and how we present ourselves needs to be to that caliber, essentially, or we hold ourselves to that caliber, I should say. So that's definitely our big target.
Awesome. I see they're in safe hands. I think the brand is in safe hands, seeing your passion around it. I think we're to the last segment, quick leadership nuggets. Maybe we'll do this in a rapid fire way. Yeah. The first thing that comes to your mind. So maybe a book that every entrepreneur should read.
Good question. Actually, I read one recently, which was absolutely fantastic. It's called Amp It Up, I think it is.
Amp It Up.
Yes. And I think I read it actually twice, to be fair, over the past couple of years. And yes, the guy who was joining with Snowflake and things like this as well, who kind of joined as a CEO in multiple companies and that as well, and just radically changed into full execution mode. Because like a lot of people, there's a great strategist, Roger Martin, things as well, talk about is like strategy is only good as execution. And I'm a big believer of, let's spend a lot of time building a kick-ass, bulletproof strategy, but it means nothing without execution. And that's what he's all about. He's like, come in, execution. And that is the most important thing, because you can talk about all the stuff you want, but it's not about talking the talk, it's all about walking the walk, So I think like that book has really got me like, whoa, you really need to be clear cut. You really need to just start removing the fluff, removing all the crap, if that makes sense, focusing on what matters and making impact instead of just thinking about things, So, and I think, again, back to the GSD mode, that's what it's all about.
It's all about. Amazing. Yeah. Any piece of advice that you've received in your life from anyone that's kind of molded you to be the person you are?
I think, I wouldn't say it's from like any one individual, but I think over the course of my time that my, as I've moved through different careers and things as well, that my leaders that I have inspired to be are both friendly and ruthless, if that makes sense. So I think there's a good combination of no assholes, but also actually this is a business. We all need to be professional, and we accept there's no exceptions on this kind of thing. So I think like I always try and be super friendly, but when somebody's kind of taking the piss, I'm happy to say like last chance straight away. Because no assholes.
Right.
I've got a big, pet peeve about because one poison pill poisons the whole water,
Right.
And so I think, last chance always, you're acting like an asshole. If you don't get your shit together, this is it. It's not about performance always. And a big thing I've seen is like, be super friendly because you want to build a great culture. And that's what I always do. But if somebody's poisoning that culture, like one chance only, and then that's it.
And that's it.
So, and I think those leaders, everybody gets with because they know where they stand. Like, this guy's not going to braid me in front of people. I never, jump on people's back and any about things. I'll say like, what's the problem here? How can we solve this together? Da, da, da. And as long as they always say, I'm working on it, I'm trying to get a problem solved and things, if it's like, oh, it's not my responsibility, that's it. I'm already like, okay, I'm on top of this guy. And it's about how he recovers from it. And then other people who are gossiping and causing, behavioral bits and pieces behind people and all that as well. That's, again, you're verging in the space of you're not committing and you're also being an asshole. So you've got no time for it, Yeah. So I definitely think like my, leaders that I've both dreaded and also admired. Dreaded as in they're not friendly whatsoever. They're far too by the book, and I think that's not a right move as well. I think you need a friendly, very culture that everybody wants to come to work in the morning. Like,
right.
I can't stand anything more than coming to work. Like, oh no, I can't bear speaking with this guy one more. That's not what I want whatsoever. And yet also I better not disappoint this guy because this guy's going to be super pissed if I disappoint him. So it's that balance, if that makes sense, So
amazing. I can keep talking to you all day long. Thank you very much, Marc. Before we go, where can our listeners and viewers follow you, and where can they follow the Giving Movement?
To be honest, I'm not a big social media user. Surprisingly, I do it for work. I've got a couple of kind of fake accounts I do just to experience the platform. So I'm not big on social media. I feel it's just a big distraction, unfortunately. So, but LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's just Marc.Jeffrey18, if I'm not mistaken now. So you can always connect with me there. In terms of the Giving Movement, I think Instagram's the best place. If you go search for the Giving Movement on Instagram, got millions of followers, and you can see all the latest content drops and all the latest messaging and things as well, and what we're doing, stores open and things like that as well. So I think that's probably the best place to come and find us as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marc, for making time for us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Along with that, don't forget to follow us on the Retail Remix page on LinkedIn, and follow us for e-commerce and retail technology solutions on www.find.com. That's FYND. It's a find with a Y. If you want to know why, follow us.